Okay.
So I suppose you're already familiar with what an operating system is.
Yep.
Can you explain that to us a little bit?
Oh God.
If in simple terms.
Uh, well, I guess it's the thing that brings everything together. It's the platform which is the most needed. Because without an OS, you can't really do anything.
I like that you called it a platform. That was pretty good. Can you really not do anything without an OS? Because obviously an OS has to start somewhere, right?
Yeah.
Okay, for instance, when you open up the BIOS or the UEFI menu,
Yeah.
UEFI setup, do you need an OS for that?
No, because that's already in the motherboard.
Right. So an operating system like Windows or Linux or Mac OS is it's not the lowest level, but it's, as far as the end user is concerned, it is the lowest level software running on the computer. It's a piece of software at the end of the day, right?
Yeah.
Right. It is the lowest level software. So that means you have your regular computer, like this one here. You have your
Yeah.
regular computer. You want to be able to interact with it. But obviously, you're not going to manually interact with each component. Like, you're not going to manually interact with like the motherboard, the CPU, the graphics
Hell
card. No,
no.
you'd like something that you'd like a piece of code, a piece of software that already coordinates sort of all of these hardware components, right?
Yeah.
Right. This is what the operating system does. It gives you a baseline to manage all the components of your system. So
Okay.
the most obviously, what is the most popular operating system?
Either Windows 10 or Mac OS.
It's obviously Windows 10 by far. Do you know
Yeah.
why? I
Be-
mean,
because
not
it's
specifically Windows 10, but like Windows in general. Why Windows?
because it's more well known. I guess it's less expensive and it's more open. It's less restricted.
So hold on. Can you repeat that for us? I don't think
Well,
I heard you very well.
well, in a sense, it's cheaper
It's
than
cheaper.
getting Mac. Uh,
Yeah, right. Okay. What other operating system are there? So we have Windows. What else?
uh, Mac,
Mac
Linux,
OS, yeah.
and then those are the only three I know.
Mac OS, Linux, right. There are a few others. One of them
Uh,
we're actually gonna use like FreeBSD.
okay.
BSD. We have Solaris as well. And I think this is a good place to stop. But like the three main ones would be these three.
Yeah.
The three more popular ones. Okay. And so you're saying Windows is cheap, right? You're saying it's cheap. You're saying it's, what else did you say exactly about Windows?
Well, it was less restricted because, from my knowledge, with Android OS and iOS,
Ah,
there's
you mentioned
also
another one, a couple others. So there is also
Android and
iOS and
iOS.
yeah, and Android. Can I
Yep.
run Android on my PC?
You can using an emulator.
Right. But like, can I install Android
You
directly on
can.
my PC as an operating system natively?
I
Bare
don't
metal.
think you can.
No, you can't.
No.
Do you know why? We'll get
Because.
into that. But it's a
Okay.
matter of the architecture of your CPU,
Oh, okay.
right? So you have X x86 is what you usually find for desktops. So
Yeah.
for instance, Windows, Mac, Mac OS, Linux, FreeBSD, Solaris, they all run on x86. And then you
Okay.
have ARM processors, which are usually found in which are mobile processors.
Okay.
And so Android, for instance, will run on ARM. iOS will run on some ARM. Now, x86 is a lot more standardized than ARM. You have because ARM you have like a bunch of standards for it. It's not quite as simple. Like you can't just install Android on iOS, even on an iPhone.
Yeah.
Not just because of the sort of restrictions that Apple will put in the way, but also from a technical perspective. Like it's not necessarily the correct chipset. It's not necessarily the correct CPU architecture.
Yeah, it isn't compatible in a
Right.
sense.
Right. Exactly. So we
Okay.
know we already know a bunch of operating systems. That's great. So let's continue with my question. Why is Windows the most popular?
Because it's also less restricted,
That's
I
restricted. How
think.
so?
Because Android, from what I know, it is an open source base, so we can modify the code, which is actually how a lot of Chinese duplicate of iOS run. It's just an Android OS modified to look like iOS.
Right. That's correct.
And then I think it's the same deal with Windows because sometimes we can see a lot of personalized computers from Asus or Acer.
Yeah. What about those?
Well,
Are they not running Windows 10?
they are, but it's more in a personal sense. It's modified so that it would work with the Asus technology.
Okay. Cheaper than macOS.
Yeah,
You said it's less restrictive than Android and iOS. Is that
yeah.
correct?
Or just I guess less restricted than Mac because Apple likes to personalize a lot of stuff and make it to their purposes so that it can't change at all.
Right. Yeah. Mac sure likes to. Apple sure likes to do that. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Um. Well, turns out that as far as Windows is concerned, there are two markets for Windows. The first one is the sort of personal computer Windows market.
Yeah.
And where Windows has an advantage there is the fact that it's two things, twofold. First of all, it's pre-installed on every computer you can buy on the market, right? So
Okay.
you have
Yeah.
John Smith wants a new laptop. He goes to Best Buy, he buys a laptop, it already has Windows. He's been using Windows for like 2 decades. He knows how to use Windows. He's used to it,
Yeah.
right? So it's like the it's because it's installed by default. But then there's the question, why is it installed by default?
It's
Well,
because it's
because
also simpler.
that's arguable. You ask people who have been using Mac forever to move on to Windows, they don't know how to do that. It's simpler
Yeah.
simply because we're used to it.
True. Fair enough.
So one one advantage Windows has is that first of all, compared to Mac, well, I don't okay. So in the sense of personal computers,
Yeah.
Windows computers are always going to be cheaper than Macs, obviously,
Yeah.
right? So as far as the economics go, it means that more people are going to end up with a Windows computer than a Mac.
Okay.
That's the first
Yeah.
thing. Also, Windows, you can install Windows on pretty much any machine that's an x86 machine, right? Like
Yeah.
any desktop can run Windows, but not any desktop can run iOS because, can run Mac OS. Because, like you explained, Apple really likes to lock their software with their hardware as much as they can. Obviously, you can, with enough knowledge, you can install Mac OS on like a desktop that you would have built yourself, but that takes quite a bit of knowledge, right?
Okay.
John
Nice
Smith
try.
isn't going to do that. We were saying that with enough knowledge, in theory, you could install macOS on any desktop, but that in practice, it'd be much simpler to just install Windows.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Can it be
Um.
vice versa with the Macintosh computer? Can you install Windows onto a Mac, for example, with enough
I
knowledge?
believe so. Yes. So from a fundamental technical perspective, and as far as I know, there is nothing that like physically restrains you from doing that. I
Okay.
believe I have seen people do it as well, but I haven't looked into it.
Okay.
Okay. But so far, you've mentioned mostly Windows and Mac. What
Yeah.
do you know about Linux?
I guess it is the open source OS most.
Right. So you were talking about cheap. Well, how cheap is Linux?
Isn't it free?
It is.
But don't you have to sort of like personalize it yourself?
So it's rather that you can personalize it, but you don't have to.